もこのベン・ローズだったのである。ベンは数多くのシャークフィーダーを育ててきたが
Heißt Ben Rose, ist gebürtiger Engländer und lebt seit seinem 6. Lebensjahr auf den Bahamas.
Interest in the Grand Bahama Caves began in 1969, when a young instructor named Ben Rose made the first dive into what is now called Ben's Cave. It is considered to be the most extensive and decorated underwater cave system in the world.
To take a closer look, and we talk with Ben Rose of the Underwater Exploring Society.
First time I had any real encounter with sharks was when I was about 9 years old.
That's a shark.
Did he say
Shark.
For eons, the shark has been surrounded by tales of fear and trepidation. Yet we're mesmerized by its majestic grace. And for those few of us who have the opportunity and the courage to come within touching distance of this awesome creature, it is an adventure like no other.
Ben could go in 15 or 20 feet of water with a tank that's supposed to last only 1 hour and stay down there for 2 hours. He would control his breath so well.
Meeting Ben, he was just a superhero. Loved animals, loved life. And that inspired me to be very similar to him.
Sharks was his passion. I guess you could say that he was one of the first Bahamians to really take a serious approach to protecting them.
He had a clicking of the jaw that was caused by the too many hours spent underwater.
Anywhere underwater, you were always looking at something. He'd pointed out something very unique. The average person just bypasses completely.
I cried my eyes out, when I heard what had happened. Not so much that he had died, but the way he died.
Diving, to me, has always been like going home. When I submerge below the surface, I feel that I'm going to a place that I belong. My relationship with sharks expanded when I came here and I met Ben Rose. That is when I would say came in full completion and in full closure. It was me, Ben, of course, and the sharks. My name is Cristina Zenato. I'm originally from Italy, but I've been living and operating in the Bahamas. I'm a scuba diving professional with an absolute passion for both sharks and caves. I met Ben at UNEXO. That's when it all started. It was like an encyclopedia of marine fauna asking questions. Uncle Ben, I saw this. What was it? It was doing this and it was wiggling like that. And he would always know exactly what I was talking about. And so it started from there, and then it developed into a long-term mentorship, a long-term friendship.
Diving with Ben was an eye-opening experience. He was very graceful in the water, something that all divers aspire to be, but it wasn't that type of grace. It was his interaction and care for reef and animals. And taking a 30-minute or 45-minute dive and it becoming a story. And that's something I adopted from him to me, being able to make something come alive, put a smile on somebody's face, make their experience.
Ben was a character. I loved the guy to pieces, and we would dive, and he would just get off. He'd just jump in the water, and you just had to make sure, you said 60 minutes, and you went over and got him at 60 minutes, because he'd be down there collecting stuff, and he'd have his little bags floating around him and his specimen jars all on the bottom and stuff. And then he'd bring them back and put them in his aquarium that he had under his house. And Ben was just Ben. He was just a character, you know, and he was just really good in the water.
We started offshore fishing with our father. Grew on us after a while. We'd come away from school at 4 o'clock in the afternoon, immediately drop our shoes and our pants and down to the beach and into the sea. And we were in and around the sea every day of the week. We were out spearfishing, and he'd just speared a fish.
And we were about, I guess, a quarter mile offshore, and I decided to take the fish ashore. And halfway between my friends and the shore,
He saw the shark came and bumped his leg, and he put the fish out of the water. The shark came up, missed the fish, and came down on the side of his head.
And Ben still had, when he got bald, you could see the teeth marks across his forehead. And it was, he called it an accident. He said the shark didn't really mean to bite him. Ben got terribly interested in scuba diving, and he soon took the tests and became a scuba diving instructor. And it was pretty tough work, but Ben was good at it, right there. I mean, he was already an extremely good spearfisherman. He left the Explorers Club for a few years and went just strictly fishing. And then he returned, and that was when he started feeding sharks, and he introduced them to the Ben's Cave experience.
Ben really didn't discover Ben Cave, because Ben Caves obviously was known by the Lucayans as a source for fresh water. They also found remains in there. The story of Ben is that Ben was the first one that back in the 60s said, oh look, a hole in the ground with some water in it. I think it's the wisest idea to go diving in it. And that is the amazing part, is that Ben was the first one to decide, back when even scuba gear was not, the best, never mind, scuba diving was not a sanctioned activity as it is now, to literally grab whatever he had at hand and go in and explore it.
There was only one road out to East End at the time from Freeport going out, and there was an old reverend here called Father Underhill, and he said to Ben, he said, out this particular road, down this ride, right on the left-hand side, there's some sort of cave in there. So that interested Ben immediately. He went out there and figured out what was there. And that would have been 59. He would have discovered Ben's Cave and started going to it and swimming around in it and diving in it.
He went into an unknown place with very rudimentary gear in that quest to know. And that's what identified Ben his entire life. And I think that is what we should all do, fuels your spirit, just an explorer at heart. The only thing I remember is I looked up and he was floating perfectly still in this crystal clear water. And I remember thinking, I want to look like that. I want to do that. And that is, I think, my first trigger of saying, I'm going to become a cave diver.
The old days at UNEXO, we thought we were very cool because we had the dolphins were now going out in the ocean with dives and things like that. And we had these fantastic wreck dives. So we thought we were going to be the king of the show in the Caribbean. But Grand Cayman had introduced Stingray City. Everybody at the show was given this big inflatable helium stingray. So thousands of these stingrays were walking all around there, and we came back from that show deflated. And on the company plane on the way home, he said, what are we gonna do to combat Grand Cayman? We can't let them win. And one of us said, well, we can start feeding the fish again. Eventually the shark catches the blood scent and they wanna come and they want that fish. Most everybody got out of the water because we didn't see a lot of sharks back then. We're talking the early 80s and mid 80s. Ben and I would stay in the water because we weren't really afraid of sharks from our commercial fishing background. When we first started the shark dive, we didn't wear a suit. In fact, we didn't even wear any kind of protection other than an extra cutoff of a wetsuit that we put a double sleeve on. And we'd have people behind us with sticks and they'd be poking the sharks if they got out of line. And there was 3 of us that really started the shark dive. There was myself, who was Mr. Procedure, and there was Ben, who was Mr. Natural, and then there was Ollie Ferguson, who quite frankly was a little bit timid and afraid of the sharks, so we had a perfect match. And one day, one of us got bit, either Ben or I, because it was only Ben and I who fed back then in the beginning, and somebody came up to us and he says, why don't you use a chainmail glove? So Ben and I looked at him and said, what are you talking about, chainmail glove? And he says, well, I'm a butcher at Publix and that's what we use and we never get cut or anything. I'll send you some. So we both put our hands on a piece of paper and we drew our hands. And a couple weeks later, we got a FedEx with 2 sets of gloves, one for me and one for Ben. And that was what we started using. So now we weren't getting bitten anymore. And one of the people who brought the shark dive to the next level is Christina.
Shark interactive dives are something very new. I mean, they're some 30 years old, maybe. A little bit more than that. Think about, you know, as much as we saw sharks, as much as we dive with sharks, there was some preconceived notions, and all of a sudden Ben was like, I gave him the fish, the sharks bit the fish, and he's like, hey, I just fed a shark. And the aha moment was like, the shark just swam away. And it kind of like came back around and looked at Ben like, do you have some more there? I wish Ben was here to tell that, because that's how he described it. And so that was the beginning. And they said, oh wow, we could have a shark dive. And that's when the company went, whoa, hold on a second. You want to do what? And all the other preconceived notions came out. You know, you're going to feed the sharks, that they're going to bite the people, what's going to happen. So it took about 2 years to then develop into a structure, eventually evolved into what we're using today, which is the chain suit.
The whole shark dive really cemented Ben and I's friendship. Shammy and Christina and the rest of them, they came well after it was already, you know, established. But in the old days when diving was fun and sharks were deadly, you know, but it was a thrill. We had an adrenaline rush. Action-packed shark diving. Then the suit came along and everything was like, oh, okay, we got a suit now, and the sharks are more reasonable. And I'm sure the sharks evolved too. People like Christina who worked with these sharks and Ben in the suit and all that. And the sharks probably evolved now. It wasn't as, they're not getting poked anymore like they were when they were coming in fast. And now it's all gentle and they know they're gonna get their food eventually. And before it was like the wild, wild west underwater.
Captain Ben, our fate was in his hands. His hands were wrapped in chainmail. And just when I thought I'd seen it all, Captain Ben blew my mind. He was petting sharks, lords of the underwater worlds.
This week we'll dive with the Underwater Explorers Society in a fascinating dolphin and shark encounter. This impressive operation, one of the largest in the world, has been a pioneer in the diving industry for over a quarter of a century.
UNEXO was the pioneer of the dive industry. And a lot of things were invented at UNEXO. The octopus regulator, dive computers were tested there because we did so many dives. We were a very tight group. We worked hard and we also played hard too. There was a bar and restaurant upstairs where after work we'd all go and we'd have a few beers together. Ben didn't really do that. He would go home and work on his paintings. UNEXO changed. When John Englander left UNEXO and it was sold to the present owners, and the whole focus changed. It was no longer a diving destination. It was more of a t-shirt shop and a dolphin experience. And I don't think they really realized what a gem they had with Ben and his knowledge and his following. And I guess he felt that with the changes, he wanted to move on.
Ben was on a regular shark dive, and a shark was coming in a little bit too fast. And what he did is basically put his hand up to redirect it. So she kind of like paused into his hand. And he was like, oh, wow, what's happening? That it happened to Ben so far back, with so little, in a certain way, knowledge and understanding. You know, I've had nearly 3 decades of watching this. I think that really speaks about his energy and what the sharks felt, and that connection that he was able to achieve with not only the sharks. I mean, I watched Ben. Ben, I think, could speak to all the fishes in the world, given enough time for him to connect and understand them. He would have been able to do that. I look back and I'm like, he had that magic energy. He told me I had that energy, but like an insight is like his energy must have been 10 times bigger for a shark to do it the first time. For him to do it without really having the amount of time that I've had to observe and going, aha, well, now I get it. It was just so much more instinctual.
Well, Ben Rose and I met during some very interesting moments working with scuba divers over at UNEXO, and because of that relationship, he quickly became someone that I felt was a very wonderful human being, very warm, cordial person who knew a lot about the ecology, both on land and in the sea of Grand Bahama, and he made it his life's work to understand what was going on and to share that knowledge with other Bahamians so that they too could have a role in protecting and looking after these beautiful natural resources that we care so much about on Grand Bahama.
Ben's relationship with conservation, I think, was the relationship that we should have. Ben had a give and take relationship, and I think that is the one that we should understand. Ben appreciated the smallest as the biggest. He was Ben of the sharks as well as Ben of the sand goby, or Ben had parasites that lived on fish named after him. So his relationship was whole. His relationship was balanced.
Now, a lot of people think that sharks are a menace to society or they're a menace to the ocean and they eat too much fish. It's not true. We all know that sharks eat the most sick fish in the ocean, and Ben's role was to basically tell Bahamians and tell the country and tell the world that sharks are not to be feared, because he knew exactly what role they played in the ecosystem and how vitally important it was for the country, the whole Bahamas government and the people of the Bahamas, to protect them. They are to be respected. And that is one of the most important things I could say I learned from him.
Sharks not only are nothing of what people make them to be, but furthermore, they're actually extremely vulnerable of our presence in this world. And that completely changed my perception, my goal of what I've been doing here, why I've been doing it. I think in a certain way, I feel like I think like him. So I started removing hooks to alleviate that individual's pain, that it was visible. The hooks became the symbol of the vulnerability of sharks from human presence. And then the messages are coming in. People say, I want to help sharks. Can I come and help remove hooks with you? And it's like, well, no, for many reasons, but you don't need to come here. You don't even need to dive to help sharks. I use it as very much a trigger conversation about sharks.
Because when I did art school, I did oils and watercolor. Coral is being covered by algae, which of course is attracting the algae tangs. 5 feet.
Please don't tell me you brought Maddie into this room.
I got a call about 5 o'clock in the morning. It was Tony. And he didn't know if Ben and Judy were here. And they weren't. So I was there at 5:30. Not a good day. You know, when I got there, the house was totally engulfed. You can stop.
I assumed that Ben was asleep and most likely had been rendered unconscious by the smoke itself and may not have even known. That's what I would have hoped. They didn't get out of their bed. I know that.
And I got there before the police department, before the fire truck. And I was only there 4 or 5 minutes, 10 minutes at the most. And the fire truck pulled up and came in. But it was totally engulfed then. Everything was burning. And even getting it out at the time, nobody would have survived it. They were already finished at that point. And it took them a long time. The fire truck kept on running out of water. This was shortly after 3 a.m. in the morning. They didn't get the fire out until it got light after 6 o'clock. The fire literally burned for 4 or 5 hours.
And then they brought me down to the police station and I had to do a report. And that was it. I've never been back. Nope.
I miss Ben clicking of the jaw. What do you miss from a friendship? Calling him up, showing up, sharing what I've seen, what I observed. Ben will show up when I spoke. So proud that he will come and sit in a crowd and listen to me talking about things that he knew so much more about. The small moments, the sharing the joys or sharing the failures. Actually telling them that I got married. Sitting with a cup of coffee, bitching about something, and then laughing about something else, and closing the night with a glass of wine.
There will never be another Ben Rose. I think one of the memories that Ben left with us is that we are the caretakers of the environment. This ocean, this land, this earth that we live on is a present to us. It's a gift.
You know, when he dove, it was just perfect. I mean, he was just out of the ocean. Ben was just Ben, a true Bahamian. what most Bahamians should be.
Ben's legacy is in the names that is left behind. Ben's Cavern, Ben's Blue Hole, Rose Garden, the Shark Dive. Me, who then has left a legacy to the other 100 of Bahamians that I've trained through the years, and the hundreds of foreigners that have come here to first be with Ben and meet Ben and learn from Ben.
UNEXO may not realize who passed through their doors, but those of us that worked with Ben, we realize who he was.
I think Ben's going to be a historical character in the formation of Freeport and its approach to marine life.
He left what I love to call a ripple effect. In his life, you could say it was the size of a pebble, but his ripple effect is the size of a meteorite has hit in the center of the Pacific, and is still ongoing.
I really love being involved in the marine environment, and have done since I was a boy of 6 wandering around. I guess it always excites me, even today, and now I'm 68, I still can go in the water and find something completely new that I've never ever seen before. And this is one of the primary things that really fascinate me about the marine environment. Anything else?